Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be together with all of you. Wonderful. Welcome. We'll start as always with a question that's come in advance and then open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. My whole life, no matter how hard I try, I seem to fall short. It has made me so afraid to try anything new. How can I get rid of this fear of failure? So this is a really deep and powerful dilemma. The idea that I fall short in whatever I try to do is a very damaging self-perception. Because what it means is, in my mind, in my perception of myself, I'm not good enough. I'm not the right person. I'm not smart enough. I'm not clever, blessed, talented, strong, creative. Whatever we're looking to be more of. If I feel like I'm not enough of that, and that whatever I do, I fail, this is a very, very damaging self-perception. And I can guarantee, even though I don't know who asked the question, I can guarantee that it's also not true. But that nonetheless, to carry that idea damages us before we even start anything. So the fear of failure, the question asked, how do I overcome a fear of failure? Well, the only way to overcome that, first of all, is to realize that I am not the results of my endeavors, right? So most of us judge ourselves by the results of our endeavors. I put together a project proposal. I take it to the boss. He or she thinks it's utterly useless. Means I'm stupid, means I'm a failure. I write a book. I can't get anybody to publish it. No publisher will take it. I finally self-publish it. Nobody buys it. I'm a failure. I take some money. I invest it in the stock market so that I can try to, make a better life for myself. I invest in all the wrong stocks, lose everything. I'm a failure. Well, these are endeavors. And in every single case, the outcome is something out of our control. So I did a beautiful project proposal, but the boss didn't like it. Well, remember, bosses are humans, which means they are subjective. They've got certain tastes, likes, dislikes, certain visions and agendas for where they're going that day, that week, that year. They've also got moods that get impacted by their own family, who they had a fight with that day, how they're feeling about themselves. So the boss throwing out my proposal has a lot more to do with the boss's own subjective ideas than the validity of my proposal. Ask any entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, like how many ideas they had that quote unquote failed, as in nobody would buy them, they couldn't get it to move, before they actually had something that took off. It's always lots. Then you think about the book example. Well, as someone who just published a book that by God's grace did do very well, there is a lot more to book writing than book writing. The writing is actually the easy part and the enjoyable part. The rest of it, the marketing, the advertising, that stuff is like pulling teeth. It requires an entire skill set that has nothing to do with your ability as a writer, which is why you've got to have entire teams around all of that, because typically people who are writers are not necessarily very good marketers. So to have written a book that you sent off to publishers who rejected it, and then you self-published and thought that you would be able to sell it, it doesn't say anything about the quality of your book. It just says that in today's day and age, you didn't have the machinery that was needed around getting that book into the world. For a book to be a success, enough people have to actually see it and read it for word of mouth to be able to start to happen. And that takes a whole different machine. It has nothing to do with the quality of your book. Take the stock market, right? We all know it's a gamble. It's flipping a coin, you at least know 50% of the time you're going to get it right, assuming you always chose the same thing. You could get it wrong 100% of the time if you kept going back and forth between choosing heads and tails, but if you were strategic, you would always choose heads or always choose tails, knowing that at least half the time you'd be right. But in the stock market, you could lose all of your money all the time. So these are just 3 randomly chosen examples, but every one of them is something where the success is completely out of your hands and has almost nothing to do with the quality of what you've created. But if in your mind you fall short, that is a dangerous statement and belief, because what that means is not, oh, I guess it's not in line with my boss's 2022 plan, or I guess she had a big fight with her husband today, but it's, I'm stupid, I'm wrong, I'm not good enough, I don't get it, I'm a failure. And this is the worst kind of thinking you can have. So fear of failure comes from this belief that I am the result of my endeavors, and that when my endeavors don't have the outcome I wanted, it doesn't just mean that the stock market crashed or that I, lost the toss of the dice. But it means I came up short. I was not good enough. I should have somehow had some kind of magical power to play it better. So fear of failure is rooted in this idea that the failure means I'm a failure. And it doesn't. one of the most critical and powerful lessons if you want to be deeply happy, peaceful, fulfilled in your life is you've got to separate, you have to unhook the outcome of your endeavors from your value as a human being. Those two things have nothing to do with each other. There's a million reasons endeavors might fail. One of my favorite personal examples is the story of how when I moved from Palo Alto, where we were actually living in a house with a backyard, into San Francisco, where we were living in an apartment, we brought our cat with us from Palo Alto to San Francisco, and the cat was an indoor-outdoor cat. Now, with a backyard, he had a lot of place to roam around. In San Francisco, there wasn't really anywhere to go, but he would wander out onto our, wasn't really a balcony, it was more like a landing of stairs that went down to the apartment down below. But we had some potted plants on the windowsill. I love to cook, and I was growing, basil and I think maybe oregano, things like that, in the pots on the window. And they wouldn't grow. They just wouldn't grow. I kept replanting them, getting new seeds, getting new soil. And it made no sense to me. I had done really well with my potted plants in Palo Alto. I mean, I never had much of a green thumb, but it doesn't take a lot to get basil to grow. And suddenly it can't even get it to sprout. And I'm looking over, and our neighbors have got all kinds of things growing, so it's not the weather. And I start to feel like, God, something's, not quite right. And you think how small of a thing like your pot of basil, nonetheless, how it impacts our own self-esteem. And I started to really feel like, God, what is wrong with me? Like, have my fingers become, bad, that somehow the seeds, the soil, I'm doing it, what's wrong? So one day I come home early from school. I was in a PhD program at the time, and I come home early, and the cat is in the pots, tossing all of the dirt from the pots over the sides into the little kind of mini backyard that we had. It wasn't really a backyard, but a little landing sort of thing. And I laughed because I realized, well, obviously I never could have thought of this. It never occurred to me our cat was the reason. But how many things in life have an explanation for not going right, as simple as that? But if I hadn't come home from school early that day, I never would have known, because the cat was always inside by late evening when I came home. So I didn't realize that he spent his days hanging out in my potted plants. So there's so many reasons that things don't go our way. And this is why in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan Krishna emphasizes so much. Don't be attached to the fruit of your actions. Do your best. But don't be attached, because you have no idea why. Something's going to sprout, something's going to grow, and something isn't. So you have to unhook your feeling about yourself from the success of your endeavors. However, if you really find that nothing you are doing is working, it might be an interesting exercise to ask yourself whether are you doing things that are really in alignment with your dharma, your inner drive, or are you doing things just because this is what the culture or society or your parents think you should be doing? And that inside you, there's this unconscious rebel that's sabotaging everything you do because that inner rebel doesn't want to be the engineer or the doctor or the business person. That inner being wants to be a musician or an artist or a monk or a kindergarten teacher. But the society has said, no, they don't make any money. How will you support yourself? That's not a success. You must do this. It's what your brothers do, your sisters do. It's what everybody does. So it's always interesting to look within and see, might there be some unconscious, subconscious aspect of us that's pushing us to fail so that we actually have an excuse to not do this thing anymore? So look at that. And as far as fear of failure, realize that the only failure to be worried about is the failure to live your life. That's the only failure that matters. At the end of their life, nobody is going back thinking, oh God, I can't believe that business proposal didn't work. I can't believe that invention I created, that I wasn't a successful entrepreneur. People don't think like that. Oh, I can't believe that time the stock market crashed on me. When we're lying on our deathbed, what people are thinking about is the opportunity to live their lives in love, in truth, in divine connection that they've passed up on. So don't allow your fear of outcome of endeavors to keep you from living your life. Be afraid not to live your life. And live it with courage. Some things will work, some things won't. But what matters is that you are living your dharma, your calling. It's the only success or failure that matters. Are there any questions that anyone here has? Yes. Yeah, but if you ask in the mic, then people online can hear it.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shruti. I'm from Bangalore. So I specialize in biotechnology and cell biology and quantum energy medicine. So I have a friend here, Dr. Sandeep Bhatt. So also I wanted to connect Vedas with science on quantum energy. So there was one strange experience happened. Can I share that here?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, so I had a question we
love strange experiences.
So it was like there was a mentor here, in this organization. He agreed to teach me Sanskrit because to decode those mantras, everything, you need to know Sanskrit. So I do know Hindi, English. So I did study Vedas and Chinmaya Mission during my school days, which was everything in English. Chinmayananda Swamiji, he translated.
Right, of course.
Everything was in English. So then for 2 days he agreed to teach me Vedas and Sanskrit. And then he was like, ma'am, like, today I'm feeling that, we should not continue because I would not like to teach a woman. So I'm like, why did you agree first? Like, 2 days before. So I was a bit, then I called back and I asked, like, I told the mentor who introduced me to other mentor, you should have introduced to, why don't you change your thought process? Because in the Vedas or in the quantum energy or, whatever, we are beyond male and female. So we are in the energy levels. So I don't know how to deal with that. It's like, I just came here, like, so to learn and also have a spiritual experience and go back and write down in my research work.
Beautiful. So,
thank you.
Sure. On any levels and all levels, we need to have, obviously, gender equality. Now, you spoke on a quantum level, and we'll come there, but let's the moment stay on a very physical level. And the reason is we can't necessarily expect our societies and communities and cultures to work on quantum levels. It would be wonderful. I would love to get everybody working on that level. But in the meantime, what we've got is physical levels of existence. On the physical level of existence, there needs to be gender equality. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't certain things that, in general, making generalizations, women tend to be better at, more inclined toward, and things that some men tend to be better at, more inclined toward. For example, growing up in California, American football, not soccer, not what you call football here, but American football, tended to be something that a lot more men were interested in than women, for whatever reason. Women were allowed. There were women's teams, but not nearly as many as there were men's teams. I knew a lot of girls who were athletes. We all were into some kind of sports. I didn't know one girl growing up who was interested in football. Something might have to do with the fact that it really has to do with like a lot of hardcore, headbutting and wrestling and throwing each other all over the ground and whatnot. Now, I give that as a really superficial example because equal doesn't mean same. And one of the great challenges of the women's movement, of the feminist movement over the last many, many, many decades, is it got derailed for a while. It's gotten much better, but when it first took off, what you saw were women who believed that in order to be equal, they needed to be men. So they started, business attire became suits, whether you were a woman or a man. That the women were sort of dressing like men in the office place in order to guarantee their equality. That they were modeling their leadership styles on the masculine styles in order to demonstrate that they were equal. Well, women have a lot of very unique and very special gifts. And of course we're equal. And in order to be equal, we don't have to be the same. And so fortunately, over the last many, many years, that has shifted in America. And I mention it because as I've watched women's movements in India happen, I'm seeing, sadly, some of those aspects that we saw in America several decades ago. of women being expected and expecting of themselves to be like men in order to have equal status. We should not have to mimic men in order to have equality. And it's critical to realize that equal does not mean same. We are different. And we are equal. Now, coming to the Vedas. There's a lot of misconceptions around religious hierarchy. It's true in Hinduism. It's true in every religion that I've ever experienced, learned anything about, or know people who are part of. Women in religion, and I say this to you as a woman in religion, struggle because the world of religion is still a man's world. And what that means is that as women, we have a very unique and very special role, I think, to play. Because God certainly doesn't discriminate. In fact, if you look at the scriptures are rooted in equality and love of women. I mean, we just finished 9 days of worship of women. To say, I will worship a woman, but I won't teach her, is kind of nonsense bordering on real lack of any kind of awareness at all. But this is what you see. And this is why, as women in religion, whether as actual robed monastics or lay women in religion, either way, to realize we have a very beautiful and very special role to play. And we must play it. Not just for ourselves, but to help other women and girls know religion is a place for you as well. And so, for someone to tell you, I don't feel comfortable teaching the Vedas to a woman, is a tragedy. Especially since this is actually a place, specifically at Parmarth, where we teach the Vedas to the students of every caste. So traditionally in most gurukuls that you would go to in India, they would be teaching them to only Brahmins. We teach kids of every caste. We bring in children of every caste into the gurukul. They all get a sacred thread. They all read Vedas. Because Pujya Swamiji says they're children of Ganga. They have no caste. Once they're here on the banks of Ganga, there is no caste. They're children of Ganga. And on a purely human level, he says, look, how do you tell one child they can study Vedas and another that they can't? Like, what kind of person could even do that? And so we never have. He also, by the way, this is going back to the 1980s, in America, in the Hindu Jain temple that he founded, gave sacred thread ceremonies to girls. Unheard of at that time. But, in America, where there isn't nearly as much segregation, there were little girls whose brothers were getting sacred thread ceremonies, and who came to him and said, can I have one? And he said, of course. I mean, of course. So he actually started this beautiful pattern of giving sacred thread ceremonies to girls. So it's a tragedy that someone said that to you. Do not take it as a statement about you or a statement about women. Take it as a statement about the person who said that to you. Because what it means is that their vision is very narrow and very stuck. And so have compassion for someone whose vision is so stuck in that way. And stay committed to learn the Vedas. Now, 2 days obviously is not the amount of time that one can possibly learn Vedas in Sanskrit. But take out some time. Come. We're actually in the midst of starting a whole new institute of yoga, of wellness, and of Vedic studies, which obviously it goes without saying will be open to every caste, every gender. So yeah, that's part of our this year plan. So we'll be able to offer an actual course in that, not just, some random person teaching you for 2 days. But stay committed, because women in religion, as I said, are needed. In the world of religion in general, because we bring a whole different touch to it, a whole different energy to it. But also to reflect to other women and girls that yes, there's a place for you in the world of religion. In fact, lastly, whenever we have big events, including Pujya Swamiji's 70th birthday celebration that we'll be having the first week of June, whenever we have big events that we bring in special priests to come in and conduct special ceremonies, we always bring girls. There are some temples and gurukuls, particularly in the south, that are doing wonderful work training young girls in the Vedas, and we always bring them. So if you're here in June, you'll see all of the pujas and yagnas being conducted by a group of beautiful young girls leading them. So it's happening, but it's happening really slowly. And we need to do everything we can to help it happen in the right way, but ideally a little bit faster. Beautiful. Yeah, of course. Of course. Does anyone else have a question? Yes.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna.
I'm a 54-year-old chemical engineer working in an oil and gas industry. I'm coming from Agartala. God has been very kind to me. I have been living very decent life, but now I don't know. I'm very confused. I don't know. I don't want to continue with my job. I think I'm not living my life. And I don't know what I can do. I'm really confused.
Okay. First of all, beautiful. And I say that because at 54, instead of on your deathbed, you realize that there is a life, a capital L life, you could think of it as, other than just going through the motions of the job and family that you're doing, and that you don't feel like you're really living. And it's beautiful because so many of us spend our entire lives just going through the motions as robots. We get an education, we get a job, we get a house, we have a family, we raise wonderful kids, but we miss actually why we are here. And so to have that moment while you still have so much of your life left is really beautiful. Now, the good news is that there's nothing that you're doing that isn't compatible with actually living your life, because that living, it's much more an internal experience than an external experience. So the very typical and sort of quintessential midlife crisis, right, is the guy who quits his job, leaves his family, gets a motorcycle, and, rides off on his motorcycle feeling like somehow now I'm free. But obviously after a short period of time, he realizes, oh my God, right, I don't have all of that beautiful connection and love and meaning that I had had. Now the drive to get on a motorcycle and leave everything behind and ride off into the sunset is a beautiful drive. It's the drive that says, I want to experience freedom. I feel stuck and I want freedom. But freedom is not found on a motorcycle on a highway. It's found inside ourselves. And so when we have that drive that says, I need to leave this, leave that, in order to be free, what I always say is, first start the spiritual work. If after you've really grounded yourself in a deep spiritual practice, you still feel like you need to leave that for greater freedom, maybe you do. But don't begin with that. Because the vast majority, almost everyone who has that yearning for freedom, it's internal. We feel stuck because our minds and our hearts and our lives are wrapped up in Maya. What do we think about? Going grocery shopping, finishing the items on our to-do list. What are we going to wear to the wedding next week? How did people talk to us? Were they nice? Were they not nice? How are we going to have that difficult conversation with our spouse, our children, our in-laws? We're wrapped up in Maya. Not just in what we do, but what we think about. What is it that upsets us? People being rude. Getting stuck in traffic on the freeway. The boss not liking the project we did. And when we really have that spiritual moment, we realize, my God, it's all Maya. Everything I think about, everything I feel, that which makes me happy, that which makes me unhappy, I've just been wrapped up only in Maya. And so there's this internal sense of, I need to break free. But then we make the mistake of thinking that the answer is in, a tropical beach somewhere. In the world of psychology, and especially in the psychology of addiction and, other pathologies, we call that pulling a location. Meaning that I think that by changing my location, my inner world is going to change. And of course it doesn't. But it's what drives so many people. Well, I've got to get out of this job, this family, this situation. I'm going to get the proverbial motorcycle. I'm going to go and be, barefoot on the proverbial beach, on the proverbial Caribbean island, and then everything will be better. And of course it isn't. Because wherever you go, there you are. And if your mind is wrapped up in Maya, it's going to be wrapped up in Maya on the beach on your motorcycle. And so the real freedom is an internal freedom. So that longing, that instinct that says, I don't know what to do, I'm not living my life, is beautiful. But before you throw away that which you've spent decades creating, which is meaningful, which is connection, allow yourself to see if you can find that meaning, that life inside of you. Can you pull your thoughts, your focus, your attention, your priorities out of Maya and into truth? So it doesn't mean that you stop working necessarily, but it may mean that you work with a totally different mindset, a totally different intention, rather than it being about competition with, the person in the next cubicle or the person in the next office or achieving that. It becomes just about being an instrument in God's hands. And in the world of science, it becomes just about being this witness every day to the miracles of how the divine unfolds here on earth. I mean, how everything is so perfectly, intricately interwoven, and how it's perfection. How does it work? I mean, you take this molecule, you take that molecule. This one gives up an electron, this one takes an electron. Now, my God, it's a totally different substance. How does that happen? It's in this divine creation. And how is it that a world that's 99.999 whatever it is % space actually makes us think that we've got, people and glasses and paper and clothes? It's all space and energy. I mean, so you could do science from the perspective of someone having darshan of the creation every minute and every moment. You could bring wonder and awe into science. That it's a window that you have into the Creator and into the creation. Or you may decide that actually what you're meant to be is, a kirtan singer in temples or a volunteer teacher. Who knows what you may decide? But allow it to come from a place that's anchored, not from a place of reaction. Because see, reaction is always pushing something away. We're moving away from something. The way you want to move in life is toward something. So as long as you're just saying, I'm pushing this away, unless it's an actually abusive situation, as a general rule of thumb, try not to leave it. try to see what are you supposed to learn in it until you are actually pulled in a positive direction towards something else. The reaction of just pushing something away does not usually lead us in good spiritual directions. It's usually just an ego reaction. When we're supposed to move in a direction, we get pulled there, we get called there. And you'll feel it, you'll know it. So in the meantime, start a very deep spiritual practice. Meditation, japa, prayer, bhakti, gyan, like as much as you can. Dive into reading of scriptures or commentaries. Dive into watching satsang, meditation, spiritual videos. Dive into bhakti, sing bhajan and kirtan. Dive into meditation. Get a mantra from a guru, chant the mantra. And let that bring you some life, some real life in your life. When you find the mind getting wrapped up in Maya, just bring it back. Bring it back to your mantra. Bring it back to your breath, to the divinity of the present moment. Your consciousness. Right? We call it sakshi, the witness. That awareness. Bring it back. And then, from a place of vision and clarity, you'll know if you're supposed to leave this job and do something else. Or maybe along the way, something will call to you. Something will land up in your lap and you'll know, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel it, I know it. And then you'll do it. But you're in a great place. Don't despair. It's a beautiful place to be in. You've just got to get your brain to stop chanting the mantra of, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. Get it chanting a real mantra. Get it praying, get it meditating. And be grateful. I mean, every time the mind says, I don't know, counter that with, thank God I've got so many options. Thank God I've got the resources and the ability to actually decide if I want to stay with my job or not. If you had no money to put food on the table, you wouldn't have that luxury. So every time your mind says, I don't know what to do, just say, thank God for this abundance of riches that I actually get to sit here and wallow in self-pity that I don't know what to do, without worrying about where my next meal is going to come from or that there's going to be a roof over my head. Like, what a luxurious place of misery to be in. Right? It really is, it's a luxurious misery. So every time the misery arises, make sure you say thank you to it. Thank you to the universe for the luxury of having it. I mean, the people begging for food on the street aren't saying, God, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. Well, if they don't do it, they don't eat. Of course they don't want to do it. They don't have a choice. So allow your perspective to change. And thank God that at 54 you've had this beautiful awareness that so many get decades later on their deathbeds. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. Beautiful morning to our family joining us from all over the world. There will not be satsang tomorrow. I have to go to Delhi tomorrow for a program. There will be satsang again day after tomorrow, so the 20th. I'll be back on the 20th. So have a beautiful 2 days, and we'll see you all, today's Monday, we'll see you all on Wednesday.